Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Larbi, for your introduction. And Jonathan, thank you very, very much for explaining the technological aspect of Zoom. I also would like you all to know that Jean-Michel, my colleague and friend, will be working together with me as the moderator. So at different times, I will ask you to write in the chat or the poll will appear. Great. Let's get started. Okay. In our session today, I'm going to cover certain aspects. I'm going to look at, we want to get on the same page. So we're going to look at concepts related to gender equality. Then we're all going to look at GBA Plus. And GBA Plus is a tool to assist organizations integrate gender policy, programs, and projects. It's a tool that helps you with that. Understand the goal of equal by 30. Equal by 30 is a huge UN initiative which has trickled down to all member countries. So one of the first things that we notice is that gender equality should be a top priority in developing policies, programs, and projects. I want to start off by letting you know that in every region of the world, discrimination laws still prevent women from fulfilling their potential. And that could be economic, their ability to work, career, even certain tasks such as going out to a show with others. Let's start off with our first poll today. Let's get us on the same page in terms of concepts. So gender refers to the biological or physical.
Karen, I would ask you to maybe show your presentation. We do not see it.
You don't see the presentation?
No, can you share your presentation, please?
It is shared, Jonathan. Shoot. I'm sharing it. Oh, man. I'm very sorry. Do you see the presentation now?
No, we do not see it, Karen. It is fine. Just
okay.
Remember, go under your bottom, the bottom of your Zoom, click on share screen, and then you can just show your presentation there.
Got it.
Perfect. And then you can just put it full screen.
Yeah. Is that better?
It is fantastic. Thank you, Karen.
Sorry very much. My apologies. Okay, great. So let's look at our first poll. Gender refers to the biological difference between men and women. True or false? Okay, great. I'm going to take a look at the results now, and we could see that 63% of the individuals, and I thank you, those of you that are taking part in the poll, and 37% said false. So 63% said true. Now, these are two concepts that often get confused, especially in program design and development. So if we look at the correct answer, it's actually false. Okay, so sex is biological. Gender is socially constructed. And when we talk about socially constructed, is that in all different parts of the world, there are different roles that are more related to male and some that are more related to female. So that's what we mean by socially constructed. In a project in India just a few years ago, I had a question to help to differentiate these two terms at the beginning of a training session. And it's very interesting because when I talked about sex, which is male or female, and now we have binary and the intersection of other aspects, but let's just start with male and female. And I had a paper and I drew down the line. On the left-hand side, it was male. On the right-hand side, it was female. Under male, I asked the participants, what characteristics come to mind when you hear the word male? And they wrote things like strong, intelligent, hardworking, the father. And under gender, under women, I asked them what are the characteristics. And they mentioned stuff like nurturing, making dinner, taking care of the kids, having empathy. Very interesting that when I asked, can a man be nurturing and have empathy, the response from the participants at the time was, no, that's the woman's role. So just to give you an example of sex and gender and how they are different and how it's so important as we integrate a gender equality perspective into our initiatives. I have another poll for you, also related to the key concepts that are related to gender. We have equality and we have equity. So let's look at our statement. The statement says, treating people the same. Is gender equality, is it about treating people the same? True or false? Okay, interesting results. So we've got 62% of participants feel that this is true. And we have 38 that say that it is false. So when we look at that, we have to look at the term equality and equity. That is really, really key. And treating people the same, that is true. Equality is about sameness. Everyone's the same. If we notice the box at the bottom, they're all the same height. But if we look at the individuals, they are at different skills and ability levels. Okay? Giving everyone the same thing, it only works if everyone starts from the same place. So I would like you to keep that in mind as we talk about gender equality and male and female. And now we look at equity. Equity is about treating people fair. So we have access to the same opportunities. Okay, we must first ensure we treat people fair before we can enjoy equality. I'll give you a minute. If you have a question about that, please put it, give you a chance to write that down. So we have just covered 4 key concepts related to gender: sex, gender, equality, and equity. And it's really important to note that equity, which is fairness, leads to equality. Same. Okay, you need the both of them. So when I first started off as a gender advisor in 2000, what I noticed was that my title was called Gender Equality Specialist. And it was all about ensuring that women were treated the same. Within 4 or 5 years, they realized women can't be treated the same because of different circumstances, maybe in the organization, circumstances in society. There are certain society norms that are embedded in our different cultures. So my name or my title was changed after 3 or 4 years to Gender Equity Advisor.
Karen, if I may, as we want this to be as participating as possible,
yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jean-Michel, Director of SETYM, so I'll be working with Karen as mentioned. So we've got somebody who's would like to dig into, can we have equity sincerely in the workplace in your experience? If yes, what must be your paradox or paradox?
Okay, I'll start with the first part. Can we have this in the workplace? In my experience, what I'm noticing is we can have fairness. Equity is fairness. We can have fair treatment because as we are looking at the world on a global scale, what we're noticing is that global teams, diverse teams, outperform homogeneous teams of people looking the same. So a lot of organizations are coming to that realization at different points that this can benefit the bottom line. In the public service, though, we find that there's a more of a push towards equity and equality because the public service represents the country, the community. And it's important, coming from the public service, a higher entity, that they are the ones that show what they're doing in terms of gender equity.
So just to make sure, we have this comment: does equality leads to equity or equity to equality?
Equity to equality. You treat people fair, and then that leads to the same. So you need both.
I'll let you go on.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your question. The problem and cost of gender inequality. I will now ask Jonathan if he will launch the video. It's 1 minute. And what I would like you to do is I would like you to take away one takeaway from this.
Karen, the video on Zoom will be extremely difficult. What I will do, I'm gonna send the link in the chat for everyone to access it and see the video. It is not a long video if you want to look at it. So in the chat, you should see a link, a YouTube link. So I would ask you to open it, and after that, we'll be able to converse about the content of the video. Thank you.
Perfect. And I will talk about the video in different aspects with information that I'll be presenting to you. So you will have it. It's a great short 1 minute video, and it really gives you the big picture of what's happening out there in our world. And why do we have to pay attention to gender equality? Okay, just gonna move the poll away. So, you know, we talk about it and we say, well, why do we have to think or bother about gender equality? I showed you the first slide at the beginning of the session, and it says that gender equality should be a top priority in developing policies, programs, and projects, okay? That comes from bilateral and multilateral donors. all the donors within the globe have a component that talks about gender equality. I'll discuss more of that when I talk about the GBA. Let's look at the issues or challenges out there for women. A poll by World Bank to establish which countries give women and men equal rights asked these questions. And these are just a few of the about 50. Can a woman travel outside her home the same way as a man? Is there legislation specifically to address domestic violence? So there are other questions, and they're related to these different criteria were surveyed. Going places, starting a job, getting paid, getting married, having children, running a business, managing assets, getting a pension. Can men and women benefit equally from these? Now, I have a poll for you, and I want you to look at which country was ranked the lowest on equal rights for men and women. Okay, keep going. I see more people are participating. This is great. Don't worry, no one sees what you write. All right, so we've got Saudi Arabia. I want you to take just 30 seconds to a minute, and I want you to write in the chat why 71%, that's the highest percentage of any of the polls that we did. The answer correctly for 2019 is Saudi Arabia. They are ranked at the lowest, but I'm very interested to know, why did you select Saudi Arabia? So in your chat, if you don't mind writing a point, why did you select Saudi Arabia? And I will ask Jean-Michel, when you have some written in the chat, to read out just a few for us.
If you want to write down your answer, why Saudi Arabia and not Canada? Because you put a photo of the President Obama and the King of Saudi Arabia. Women were not allowed to drive and move into public places. We heard a lot about that in the past 2 years, about the driving aspect of it. Takes some time to type. Because of their religions and traditions, women not allowed to engage in sports. I think that's the case, that they are separated from men in public events, if I'm correct. Lack of freedom of expression of woman, because I know women can drive without a husband or male figure around her, discriminating policies against women in many aspects. So mainly it turns about policies and rules to what I see here.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Jean-Michel, I saw that someone had their hand up. No? Okay, that was perfect, right on. A lot of things that we've heard in the media, we've heard in our own countries about Saudi Arabia. But I do want to let you know that as of 2020 on the research, and I will give you the link for that research, Saudi Arabia and the UAE head the list of most improved. Okay, so they are making efforts to integrate gender into social society, civil society, sorry about that. Okay, Now, I want to ask you another question. But before I do that, Jean-Michel Crisologa Martino Mendez has raised his hand. Her?
I don't see it
Okay.
here. Oh, just 1 second. Yeah, Joe. Joe, can you, Mr. or Mrs. Mendez, can you give her or him the floor? Yep. Mr. or Mrs. Mendez.
Yeah.
Coming on.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry for my English, is not very good. I'm from Guinea-Bissau.
Okay.
I'm a medical doctor. Yeah. Now I just to say why the Saudi Arabia is the country whose the right is not the respect, because I watched one video that the woman cannot watch the game in a stadium. Another thing, they cannot be in a stadium just to watch the game. This is the reason that I chose this answer.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Crisologo.
Okay, now what I want you to do is I want to look at our other poll. And what we're looking at is how many countries, I'm not going to ask you what the countries are, unless you want to try to think yourself, maybe what part of the world, how many countries do you think currently give men and women equal rights?
So we all know that there's about 192 to 200 countries, depending of the count. So is it 8, so 4%, 10%, 3%, or more or less 8%?
I think we've got a really smart group here, Jean-Michel, Jonathan, because the answer is 6. And where in your chat, what part of the region, what part of the world, the globe, do you feel that the majority of those countries are that treat men and women equally? You can just write it in your poll, in your chat.
Well, I think most of the participants have the same thing in mind. Scandinavia?
Yes.
Europe?
Yes.
Scandinavian country, Europe, and that's it. No, nobody entered Antarctica so far.
No, those two regions are regions that treat the highest in terms of treating men and women equal rights, particularly our Scandinavian countries and partners. And you really see it when you get funding or assistance to work on initiative from the Scandinavian assistance donors, because they really make sure that they put an aspect about gender in there. So let's get to gender. Gender equality, GBA, gender-based analysis. In this section, I want you to know that I'm also going to talk about a real experience, okay? So please feel free to put something in the chat, not the chat, in the Q&A, if you have a question, and we'll go through this aspect. Remember, we only have 45 minutes. So this is just a broad overview to assist you in thinking and planning with your team, with your stakeholders, with your colleagues, okay? So first of all, GBA plus is the word that Canada uses to integrate gender equality into programs. And what do they mean when they say integrate? What they really mean is to ensure that men and women benefit from the project. How do we ensure that if we are building new roads and the majority of women in one village have to use that road to go to the market for family food or to sell their wares? It would be very important to understand, how does this new road benefit and affect women and men? Does it benefit and affect them differently? Yes, we would find that in a lot of projects, the benefit would be different, but projects want to make sure that they talk about the benefit to men and women. So GBA acknowledges, and by the way, just to let you know, some of you may have heard the word gender mainstreaming. All over the world, they call it gender mainstreaming, which is really about ensuring that projects benefit men and women equally. And in Canada, they use the GBA plus now. Also with the GBA plus, particularly, there's the opportunity to look at different intersections of men and women. And what do I mean by intersection? Because as we know, a woman, she could be from a particular caste. She can also have a religious background. And another woman can have the same, being from a different caste and a different religious background. Do those intersections affect how they would benefit from the projects? These are some of the questions that we ask in gender-based analysis. So
Karen,
here
before we go on, Mr. Mohammed, Khalid Mohammed asks, how can we address the cultural dimensions of in bring about gender equality and equity?
Okay, can you be a little specific about the cultural aspect? Can you just give me a little example?
Is it more about the religion, Khalid? Is it more about... Maybe we can go on and keep it in mind and get back to it by the end. In the meantime, while he precisely specific more precisely his question.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you're asking, you'll see as we go through this slide, but just keep in mind, how do we look at culture, religion, age, race, physical? We look at that through sex disaggregated data. So there are different surveys as part of the GBA. So let's start off. We have to identify the issue. What is the issue? Then we look at challenge our own assumptions. And this is where we have to be really aware of what are our bias. And then we have aspects that are unconscious, that we don't even know that we hold that bias. So challenging the assumptions is really huge. It also touches upon sex and gender, okay? Challenge our assumptions, equality, equity, because some people feel that if you treat women with a little bit of fairness, it means that they will have the edge on a man. And that's not the point. As we saw with the boxes, everyone starts at the same level. Can everyone start at the same level? It's something that we have to reflect on and brainstorm and understand in our own situations. Gather the facts, research, and consult. Develop options and make recommendations. In this develop options and make recommendations, and I'm going to go through an example further, but it could be something as sending out a survey to only women in the organization. It could be sending out a survey to everyone so you can get different perspectives. And then we have monitoring evaluation. Okay, but once you've identified the issues and gathered the facts and develop your approach, the monitoring and evaluation would be, as I like to say, it's already set up because you have key aspects and the monitoring evaluation can evaluate those key aspects. We also have communicate. One of the things I've learned in working as a gender advisor and specialist is communication is so key. All the different levels within the public service, communicate, and document. We have to document information. So in our examples, I have kept the diagram of the GBA plus so that you could see it as we talk about it. So what does it help us do? The GBA helps us move beyond our assumptions, okay? Get us away from our assumptions, our biases, because we're looking at the bigger picture. Uncover the realities of people's lives. So one of the things I noticed on the project when I'm working with the whole project team of 30 people, there was 3 women. And the reality was the men felt like, oh yeah, well, there are opportunities. They're engineers because we're talking about an energy project. And another thing is we're looking at ways to address people's needs. So when we talk about challenging our assumptions, is our issues gender neutral? How might attitudes and norms, my own and those of the organization and those of the institutions and society limit? How does that limit our view? And do my assumptions prevent me from asking questions and hearing or understanding answers that are outside my own experience? Okay, these are 3 of like key questions that really evolve, that get answered. Okay, so case study, MPSCB.
Before we go on, Karen, just an interesting comment we've got here. What if, due to local religions, and that's a bit linked to what Khalid mentioned before, by culture, he was meaning tradition, norms, beliefs as they affect the society. But what if, because of the local religions, beliefs, women are not even allowed to participate in these gender meetings? How can you solve the issue? That's a tricky one.
That's very interesting. So I will give you the progression. This journey takes time. We can't start it and within a week, it's all solved. So in the case of MPSCB, Madhya Pradesh State Electricity Board, all right? The issue was women's access to modern energy sources for their work. And their work is cooking, cleaning, and some go out to work. So you asked about if women cannot even attend the meetings. Well, I didn't hold a meeting. I think it was a year. And the year was about building awareness for the project team, the 30 people, 4 women, and the men, 26 men on the team, and having an awareness. And that came out of interviews and talking with different people in focus groups. Then what happened, because having a few sessions, the men really understood and bought in and felt like this was good. So the women created a women's council. On that women's council, we defined the scope of work, the mandate, and what are the key activities based on our interviews that we have to do to ensure women's access, for people to understand the concepts of sex, gender, equality, equity. We had different meetings, And it grew the interest and the confidence in the woman. And then we had the big session. And the big session was open to all women in the village. It was open just for women, because the culture said to me, Karen, some women will not talk if men are there. So from there, we had all the women. And I have to tell you, it was a very moving time, because we had from, I would say, 20 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old, to 110. And when that 110-year-old woman walked in with her cane and people helping her, she was, I am very happy to hear about this, what you're doing. And we had 160 people, and we got some answers. We had them work in groups. We got what they thought the issues were, what are the benefits, what are some activities that they see that we can use and implement within their culture and their organization to up women's participation and access within the energy sector. Does that answer your question? Just put a hands up or click.
To me, I think it does. And if we can make a parallel in some culture, it's not well seen or not even possible for an employee to comment on their boss's attitude or decision publicly. In some others, not even privately, but in some others, it's well seen and welcome that employees will comment, question their boss's decision. So if I'm correct, that could be a parallel
Yes.
to what women are facing in some cultures.
That's perfect. And even in some cultures, I mean, but again, remember what I said, it takes time. And I remember the second year, midway through the second year, I was at the marketplace with some of the colleagues there in India, and a gentleman with his wife. She comes up to me, she's like, Karen. She was part of the women's committee, and her husband's there with her and a child. And her husband says to me, Karen, I have okayed for my wife to go to Bhopal with the women's committee. And it was so, how do I say, exhilarating for him that he had heard about what's happening with gender equality, and he was giving permission for her to go on the train with us. That was huge. And in some parts of the world, it's like, really? But we have to be sensitive and aware of the differences of culture. We also saw issues in job position, working conditions, and opportunities. And guess what? People didn't believe. They're like, no, everybody has equality. We did a survey, and as you could see, where the females rank in different positions. Executive level, 1481 men, female 13. Class 2, these were the first set of numbers that we got. What do you notice? If you don't mind putting it in the chat. Anything, any observations? Jean-Michel, I think
people are typing.
Chrysologo has his hand or her hand raised, his hand raised.
I think it was before, maybe Chrysologo. Oh. Is it still of actuality?
Okay.
Your answers are starting to enter. Poor women, poor female representation in decision-making level in the technical fields. Too few women at decision-making level. Class 1 and 4 have less women. And if you could repeat the question, maybe it would help some people to
Sure.
have a better idea if you can.
Sure. When you look at the stats, the gender stats, and this is what we call sex disaggregated data. And this is for an organization that's looking at where are people in the organization. So here with sex disaggregated, it is by male, female, and by the different positions or functions in the organization. Class 1 being the highest level in terms of decision making, okay? Okay, and we'll notice that women are really more located in technical and support staff. I'm going to move on because of our time, and I see we have some questions for after. The other part of the GBA process is gather facts, research, and consult. And I'll have to say, on this particular project, I took it a step further since I'd already had experience, and the research was really in different sectors because I want to know the big picture for the organization. So we did interviews with the UNDP, we did interviews with the World Bank, interviews with the ILO, and what that did, and the UN. And that was an opportunity to find out what are they doing in the region. Then we looked at academia, the different universities that are located. What are they doing in terms of gender equality? Then we looked at non-profit organizations. What are they doing around gender equality? Because what I've noticed in some instances is that civil society and public servant departments and initiatives partner with either a multi or bilateral donor or with a nonprofit or with someone in academia. That was a really good, deep research finding out the big picture. And the reason we do that is because in the end, the World Bank was doing a lot of research and they had policies and research, but they could not implement. So with the project and the work, our team was able to implement the policies, the programs, and the activities that were designed and developed for a particular region by the World Bank. So we need to consider integrating gender at 3 levels. You know, the project level, who's participating on this project, the institutional level. In this instance, it was the promotion of gender equality at 3 energy locations. Only 1 location, there were women. The others did not have any. And then the impact level. How will this make a difference? Okay, how will this increase capacity building? These are some of the questions and the different levels. As I mentioned, we do questionnaires, surveys, and I want to leave you with something today. And that was that limited gains in gender equality and women's rights made over the decade are in danger of being rolled back due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The UN Secretary General said in April 2020, urging governments to put women and girls at the center of their recovery efforts. So even now in this pandemic, we have to take into consideration the differences in treatment between men and women. And it's all part of the UN's goal to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And right now, 2018, worldwide, 27% of managerial positions are held by women. And that's why there's such a push worldwide that the UN have come up with equal by 30. And what I've done here is I'm just showing you some of the countries, the African, can we see that here? They're part of that. A lot of different countries and have signatured and signed on to this. Equal by 30. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with is we need to be more comfortable with the uncomfortable and less comfortable with the too comfortable. I want to thank you very, very much. to my colleagues and to you, most of all, for your attention and your participation. Thank you. I'm ready to take questions. Jean-Michel?
Thank you very much, Karen. So can you go back a bit in your presentation? Mr. Modis mentioned that gender equality through policies is definitely about changing cultures and attitudes, so change management in other
Yes.
words. But in the scope in project is a lot more limited. Can you suggest to integrate gender equality in a limited scope of a project? So
yes,
maybe step by step, like you mentioned before?
Sure. So step by step, how to integrate that into a project. So
Yep.
I'm going to say you're a project and you've got a PMP, like a project management scope. So what do we want to do? We want to look at, well, what's the issue? And you can decide, oh, we want to get more innovative ideas. We want to ensure that we are connecting to the bigger picture of our country and gender equality. You have to identify what's the issue. So once you've done that, then you would look at, okay, how many people are involved in this project? Men, women, culture, like in terms of their religion, if their caste, and you do a sex disaggregated data. You would look at the project, identify who the men and women are, what positions do they hold? And you may want to, when you do the research and you look at your assumptions, you may want to step back and look at a past project, okay? And do the same thing. You're always looking at sex disaggregated data. You are identifying the issue. You are, do we need to have more women? Then we also have to think about age, all right? So the sex disaggregated data can include all of that, and it gives you a picture. Remember, diverse teams outperform homogeneous teams.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think it answers as well the Dr. Raman questions or comments. What about the steps for project cycle? So does it answer your comments or question, Dr. Raman?
And the project cycle, it's something that would be done at the beginning of the project cycle. Or when the project is into its beginning, they may notice and say, you know what? It's always best before though, but if it's while you're into the project and say, will this project benefit men and women equally? That's like the key question that we are asking when it comes to projects.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, for sharing these thoughts with us this morning. Thank you all for joining us from West Africa, Central Africa, Mozambique, Ghana. A lot of people mentioned from where they were from at the beginning. Those who would like to know more about the project cycle, for instance, we're going to have other webinars like this one. If it's the first one you're attending, by next week, we will discuss about more specifically the project cycle, having a look at the essential project management toolkit, how to build up successfully manage and how to successfully manage projects. So it's going to be another webinar that will take place next Tuesday, May 26th, if you would like to join us. As if we move to a more HR area of discussion, we'll have another webinar on happiness at work next Thursday on May 28th. So if you're interested, these are some of the subjects that we will have a discussion on in the upcoming days, weeks. We'll have others on financial management, good governance that will take place in June as well. We will try to have these discussions at least twice a week up till the end of June at the moment. Again, if as we would like to remain in contact with you, if you have specific issues, questions that that remains after these webinars, you're facing a specific problematic in your daily work in this time of crisis, please don't hesitate to send us an email, as we can answer to your specific questions in our technical online assistance that we've put in place during this time of crisis. Again, just to ensure that we can keep in touch with you while we cannot travel and work face to face with you. So I thank you very much for joining us today. Please stay safe and join us for the next webinar that will take place in the upcoming weeks. So thank you very much.